working on an answer find and shade worksheet, and this is called a 2-in-1. And I'll explain that to you in a minute. And this worksheet covers a percent of a number. And I'm assuming you know what a percent of a number is because this is a level 3 worksheet. So I assume you're pretty good at solving these problems. But I'm here to help you just in case you need a little bit of help. But I'm hoping I can go through this worksheet fast because there's 30 questions. Anyway, percent of a number. A percent of a number is like saying I have 50% of 6, and 50% means half, so I have half of 6, which is 3. So a percent of a number is the amount of the number you have. It's the percent of a number. And the directions say you must answer all the problems, round the answers to the nearest whole number. Whole numbers would be like 1, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 numbers without decimals. If you had a number like 32.1 for an answer, you would have to round that to 32 because it's closer to 32. If you had 32.8, you would have to round that to 33. And that's what it means by round the answers to the nearest whole number. And then it says choose odd or even. And that's what the 2-in-1 means. When you're solving these, you have to solve all the questions. But when you're solving them, if you choose odd, you only shade in the odd numbered problems, like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So you would solve number 1 and you would shade in the answer to number 1. You wouldn't do number 2, then you would shade in all the answers to number 3. But you do have to solve number 2, you just don't shade in that one. And if you do the even, it's the opposite. You would only shade in the even numbered problems like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So you'd solve number 1, but you wouldn't shade it in. You would solve number 2, you would shade that one in. You would solve number 3, but you wouldn't shade it in. You would solve number 4, and you would shade that one in. You still have to answer all the questions, but when it comes to shading, you only shade in the odd or the even. It's your choice. This will actually make 2 different pictures. Kind of cool. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Pretty artsy stuff here. Well, enough of that. Let's get started. Problem number 1, 42.5% of 59. 42.5% of 59 equals an unknown number. So you're trying to find out what percent of 59 you have. And there's 2 ways of doing this. There's the fraction way and the decimal way. I personally like the decimal way, but I'm going to show you both ways just in case. There's actually shortcuts too, but you can use these 2 ways to solve any percent of a number problems. So here is the fraction way. A percent is out of 100. So if you have 42.5%, what you're saying is you have 42.5 out of 100. Of means times 59. And then you just write this as a multiplication of fractions. 42.5 over 100 times 59 over 1. Because 59 over 1 is the same as 59. Basically, all you're going to do is multiply and then divide by 100. Let's get started. We're going to multiply 59 times 42.5. I'm going to first move the decimal out of the way because we don't need it. But when I'm done, I need to move it 1 space back. Then I'm going to multiply. 9 times 5 is 45, carry the 4. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 4 is 22, carry the 2. 9 times 4 is 36, plus 2 is 38. I am going to add a 0 here for a placeholder because we're starting with the 5 now, which is in the tens place. And I'm going to multiply 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, carry the 1. And 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21. Then I'm going to add this all together. I get 5, 7, 10, carry the 1. 1 plus 3 plus 1 is 5, 2. And I already told you I'm going to have to move the decimal 1 space back. So we get 2,507.5 over 100. Now we have to divide by 100, and hopefully you know this trick. When you divide by 100, since there's two zeros, all you do is move the decimal 2 spaces to the left to make the number smaller because you have 2 zeros. So our final answer is going to be 25.075. But the directions told us to estimate or round to the nearest whole number, which would be 25. And this whole process is using fractions. Now, this way works, but doing all these fractions sometimes gives me a headache, and I prefer doing it another way, the decimal way. Number 2, the decimal way. We're going to do the same problem. 42.5% of 59 equals, and before I even start, I'm just going to move this decimal 2 spaces to the left because I'm going to change a percent to a decimal. And to do that, you move 2 spaces to the left. 2 spaces or 2 place values, 2 places, all the same, to the left. And you always do 2 spaces. It doesn't matter how big or how small the number is, it's always 2 spaces. So this changes the problem to 0.425 of becomes multiplication 59. So basically, it looks like the same problem over here, but there's no fractions or anything. We just multiply and we're done. We're going to have to do a multiplication problem. 59 times 0.425. And we still have to move the decimal out of the way before we multiply. I always do this to remind myself to put it back when I'm done. So we're going to have 3 digits or 3 places we're going to have to move the decimal to the left. And we're going to multiply. 9 times 5 is 45. I know we already did this, but let me multiply again. And we get the same exact answer. But when we're done, we just move the decimal 1, 2, 3, because I had a 3 right there. And we get 25.075, which we estimate to 25. Same exact answer. So here is way number 1. This is the fraction way, where we turn everything into fractions. We can cross cancel and multiply and blah, blah, blah. And then here is the decimal way. That's what I call them. And I prefer this way because it's just straightforward. You move the decimal 2 spaces to the left, you multiply, you're done. Easy smeezy. And this is the way I will use to solve all the problems. So for problem number 1, the answer is 25. If you decide to do the odd problems, you would shade in all the 25s in this picture. If you do the even, you don't shade this one in. Problem number 2. This is a little more difficult because you're missing the percent. We have an unknown percent of 85 equals 10. And on problem number 1, we actually had the percent, and all we did was take the percent, multiply it by the number, and it gave us the answer. But the problem with this one is we're missing this piece right here, so we cannot multiply. Now, some of you have algebra experience, and you can solve this the algebraic way. But I'm just going to quickly show you how to solve these problems, so you don't have to use algebra. So we're missing this piece right here, which tells us we cannot multiply. And since we can't multiply, we're going to have to work in the opposite direction. And since we're working in the opposite direction, we're going to have to divide. In other words, we're doing the opposite operation. And all we're going to do is take the 10, divide it by 85, and that will give us the percent. And you do this for every problem that's missing this piece and this piece. You just take this number right here and divide it by either this one or this one. Okay, let me write this problem then. We're going to have 10 divided by 85 equals an unknown percent. See? 10 divided by 85 equals an unknown percent. And this turns into a long division problem, so I'm going to write it right over here. 10 divided by 85. 5. And now we just divide. Let's see, 85 doesn't go into 1, 0. 85 doesn't go into 10, 0. I'm going to have to add a decimal right here, and I'm going to bring it straight up. And this allows us to add a few zeros. I think I'll add 3 of them so we can continue dividing. Alrighty, 85 goes into 100 one time. 1 times 85 is 85. I subtract, I get 15. I bring down the next 0, and I get 150. And 85 goes into 150 one time again. I get 85 right here. I subtract, and we will get what? 65? Because 65 plus 85 is 150. Now I'm going to bring down the other 0, and we have 650. And I'm going to use my estimation skills, and I know 85 is between 80 and 90. And 80 times 8 is 640, but 90 times 8 will give us 720, which tells us the answer must be 7. I'm going to put 7 right here. Let me clean this up. I hope some of you know how to do long division with estimation to help you solve your problems. And over here, I'm going to multiply 7 times 85. 7 times 5 is 35, carry the 3. 7 times 8 is 56, plus 3 is 59. So this is going to be 595. And I can subtract again. I'm going to borrow from the 5. The 5 turns into a 4. The 0 turns into a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. I need to borrow from the 6. The 6 turns into a 5, and the 4 turns into 14. 14 minus 9 is 5, so I'm left with 55. Now I can add another 0 and keep on going and going and going and going, but actually I can stop here because we're rounding to the nearest whole number. Let me continue this problem, and hopefully you figure out what I'm talking about. We get 0.117, but this is a decimal, and right here it's asking what percent of 85 equals 10. So we need to change this decimal to a percent. And to change a decimal, let me write this right here, a decimal to a percent, we're going to need to multiply by 100 because a percent is out of 100. And all we do is take this and multiply it by 100. And the simple way to multiply numbers by 100, all you do is count the zeros, 1, 2, and that tells us to move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. So this becomes 11.7%, or 11.7 over 100. That's the same thing as a percent, because a percent is out of 100. But the directions told us to estimate or round to the nearest whole number, so this is approximately 12%. The answer for number 2 is 12, and it will be 12%. But actually you can just write 12 because there's already a percent right there. And so if you did evens, you would look for the number 12 in here, not 12%, just 12, and you would shade in all the 12s. If you did odd, you would not shade this one in. On problems 1 and 2, you actually have done it both ways now. You've changed a percent to a decimal and a decimal to a percent. Let's take a look at this really quick. You've done a percent to a decimal, and you've done a decimal to a percent. When you change the percent to a decimal, you divide it by 100. When you change a decimal to a percent, you're multiplying by 100. And let's do an example really quick just to make sure we got this. If I told you you had 23% and we wanted to change that to a decimal, well, 23% is 23 out of 100. And to change it to a decimal, we just divide it by 100, which tells us, let me write this right here, 23. If the decimal is not in sight, it's on the right. This tells us just to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left, which gives us 0.23. And when you change a decimal to a percent, let's say we have 0.23, we're going to have to multiply it by 100 because we're changing it to a percent, which is out of 100. So what we do is we just move the decimal 2 spaces to the right, which becomes 23%, or 23 out of 100. In other words, the basic rule is you always move it 2 spaces. It doesn't matter how big or small the number is, you always move it 2 spaces. But when you're changing a percent to a decimal, you move it to the left. When you're doing a decimal to a percent, you move it to the right. You can press pause and study this for a second if you're a little confused. But hopefully you get this. And it's a really simple rule. It's always 2 spaces. And when you're doing a percent to a decimal, you're making the number smaller. So of course you're going to move it to the left. When you're doing a decimal to a percent, you're making the number bigger. So of course it's going to be to the right. Let's continue with the worksheet. Problem 3 is 79% of 66. 79% of 66. First off, we're going to change this into a decimal. So we're going to divide by 100. So we're going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. So we're going to get 0.79 of turns into times 66. Now it's just a simple multiplication problem. So over here, I'm going to write 66 times 0.79. I need to move the decimal out of the way so I can multiply. I'm just going to put a 2 right here to remind me to put it back when I'm done. Then I'm going to multiply. $52.14, but the direction said estimate to the nearest whole number, so this will be 52. So 79% of 66 is 52. Let me write this for our answer, 52. Let me go back to this and let me cover something really quick just to kind of help you, because sometimes you might want to check your answer to make sure it kind of looks correct. And all I do is when I check my answer, I estimate this out. So I changed 79% to like 80%, something easy. And I changed 66 to maybe 70. And what is 80% of 70? Well, all you're going to do is multiply 8 times 7, which is 56. And isn't 56 close to 52? So I'm pretty sure 52 is the answer. At least I'm not getting some crazy answer where I say, wait a sec, this doesn't make sense. But you see how I estimated the percent and the number? And that way I can do it really quick in my head. And that gives us an estimate, and it shows us that we're really close. And so I'm pretty happy with my answer. Now, do you have to do this for every single problem? I wouldn't, because you don't have enough time. But sometimes you might be wondering if you have the right answer, and it's a good idea to do this. What I'd like you to do is try to do problems 4, 5, and 6 on your own. When you're finished, come back to me, and we will check your answers. See you in a bit. Welcome back. You were supposed to do 4, 5, and 6 on your own. Problem number 4. You have 22% of 163. 22% of 163 equals a number. We're going to quickly change this to a decimal. So we move the decimal over 2 spaces, and we get 0.22. Of turns into multiplication, and we get 163. So we just do a quick multiplication problem. So we get 35.86. And again, we need to estimate or round this to the nearest whole number. And since 35.86 is actually closer to 36, we write 36. And just show you really quick to check your answer, just in case you might want to do this, you just estimate this 22%, let's say 20%, really easy. And change this 163 to 160, and I change the of to times, and all I do is do 2 times 16, which gives me 32. Well, check it out, 32 is really close to 36, so I'm pretty sure that my answer is correct. And again, you don't have to do this all the time. I just wanted to show you, just in case your teacher says, make sure you check your answer. I want you to check your answers. So this is a quick way to say, hey dude, I checked my answers. The answer for that one is 36. Problem number 5. Problem 5 is 40% of a number equals 81.1. 40% of a number equals 81.1. You cannot multiply forward because we're missing a number on this side right here. So we're going to have to work in the opposite direction, which means we're going to divide. But before we divide, let's change this 40% to a decimal. So we're going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. By the way, if the decimal's not in sight, it's on the right. That's how I know it's here. If it's not in sight, it's on the right. Very simple to remember. So if you don't see the decimal, it's here on the right. So I'm going to move it 2 spaces to the left to change it into a decimal. So I end up with 0.40 of is times unknown number equals 81.1. Well, I can't work forward because I'm missing this number. So I'm going to work backwards. And I'm going to say 81.1 divided by 0.40 equals an unknown number. So this is a division problem. 81.1 divided by 0.40. I hope you know you cannot have a decimal out here on the outside. Yes, I'm using very simple terms, the outside and the inside. You cannot have a decimal on the outside, so we need to change this decimal or this number into a whole number. So we move it 2 spaces to the right to change it into a whole number. So this becomes 40. But whatever you do to the outside, you have to do to the inside. Since I moved this decimal 2 spaces to the right, I need to do the same thing to this one. 1, 2. So I'm going to put a 0 in the empty space. So basically, I end up with 8,110 divided by 40. And now we divide. 40 does not go into 8, but it goes into 81 2 times. That becomes 80. We subtract, we get 1. I bring down the 1, we get 11. But 40 can't go into 11, so I put a 0. Then I bring, well, this is 0. I subtract, I get 11. I can bring down the next 0, and I get 110. 40 goes into 110 2 times. That becomes 80. I subtract, I get 30. Well, I don't have any more zeros, so I can add a decimal and start adding a couple zeros here. I'm going to bring up the decimal. I'm going to bring down the 0. So I get 300. How many times does 40 go into 300? Well, 10 times 40 is 400, so it's going to be close to 10. My guess would be 7 because 7 times 4 is 28. So this is 7. 7 times 40 is 280. And I subtract, I get 20. Really quick, 7 times 4, which is 28, and then I just take this 0 and add it back. When you multiply numbers that end in a 0, don't worry about the zeros until you're done. Let me erase this. I can stop here. And the reason why is because this is a 7 right here. And I know that I'm going to have to round up to 203 because a 7 is greater than 5. 202.7 is approximately 203. The answer here is 203. So 40% of 203 equals 81.1. And I come over here and I put 203. Number 6. You have 32% of a number equals 24. You're going to have 32% of a number equals 24. You're going to solve this the exact same way. We're going to have to work in the opposite direction. First off, we're going to change the 32% to a decimal. Move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. If it's not in sight, it's on the right, and then move it 2 spaces to the left. So it becomes 0.32 of is times. You have an unknown number equals 24. I have to work the opposite direction, so I'm going to say 24 divided by 0.32 equals an unknown number. So again, I'm going to do a long division problem. 24 divided by 0.32. and we are done. It says that 32% of 75 equals 24. Over here, we're going to put 75 as our answer. Well, I think I helped you enough to get you started. Hopefully some of this makes sense. I'd like you to try to do problems 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 on your own. When you're finished, come back to me and we will check your answers. See you in a bit. Welcome back. You were supposed to do problems 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Problem number 7. It's an unknown percent of 157 equals 77. Well, we have an unknown percent of is times 157 equals 77. Well, we can't multiply because we're missing this piece. We're going to go the opposite direction, so I'm going to do the opposite, which is division. I'm just going to write this as 77 divided by 157 equals an unknown percent. Do you see how I just went ding, ding, like that? That's how I wrote it. I just wrote it backwards. I'm going to have to do a long division problem, which I'm going to do right over here. I'm going to have 77 divided by 157. I'm going to need to add a decimal because the 77 is too small. Bring that straight up, and I'm going to add 3 zeros. I think 3 should be enough. And we have 157, and I'm going to estimate 157 to 150 to kind of help me guess what the answer is going to be. We'll start with the 150. How many times does 150 go into 770? Because 7 is too small, 77 is too small. It has to be 770. And my guess would be 4. I think that's a good try. I'm going to put a 4 right here. And 4 times 157. 4 times 7 is 28. Carry the 2. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 2 is 22. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 2 is 6. I'm going to get 628. I'm going to subtract. The 0 is too small, so I'm going to borrow from the 7. It becomes a 6. The 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. And 7 minus 6 is 1. And 142 is less than 157, so I did it perfect. I'm going to bring down the next 0, and I get 1,420. Well, I'm guessing it's 9 because 10 times 150 is 1,500. I'm going to try 9 times 157. 9 times 7 is 63. Carry the 6. 9 times 5 is 45 plus 6 is 51. Carry the 5. 9 times 1 is 9 plus 5 is 14. 9 works out perfectly, so 9 is going to go up here. And we subtract, and we get 7. I'm going to bring down the other 0, and this is too small, so this is just going to be 0. Our final answer we have is 0.490. We have to change this to a percent. And we already talked about this. You're going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. This is approximately 49%. The answer is 49% of 157 equals 77. And you can check this really quick because 49% is really close to 50%, which means half. What is half of 157? That is approximately what? 78? Between 78 and 79. And look what we have. We have 77. I'm pretty sure this is correct. 49%. The answer for problem number 7 is 49%. Problem number 8. 62.5% of 196.8. Wow. 62.5% of 196.8 equals an unknown answer. Well, we can work this way. So first we change the percent to a decimal by moving it 2 spaces to the left or dividing it by 100. We end up with 0.625 of is times 196.8. We're going to have to do a multiplication problem, which I'll do right here. 0.625 times 196.8. You notice you don't have to line up the decimals when you are multiplying. I'm going to have to move the decimal one space here, so I'm going to put a 1. And 1, 2, 3 spaces here, so I'm going to put a 3. And 3 plus 1 is 4. So when I'm done, I need to move the decimal 4 spaces to the left or have 4 digits to the right of the decimal. Well, let's multiply. We get 123 for our answer. The answer for number 8 is 123. You know what? I am totally losing my voice right now, so this is what I like to do. I like to do problems 9, 10, 11, and 12 really quick for you. I'm just going to show you the work, play some music in the background because I'm losing my voice. Let's just try to do these really quick, 9, 10, 11, and 12 with some music in the background, and hopefully you'll get it, and we'll go from there. Problem number 9. Check it out. like you to do next is problems 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 on your own. Come back to me. I'll rest my voice and we will go over those really quick. See you in a bit. Welcome back. You were supposed to do 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Problem 13. 39% of a number equals 48. 39% of a number equals 48. We change this to a decimal by moving the decimal 2 spaces to the left. The decimal's not in sight, it's on the right, so that becomes 0.39. Of is multiplication. We have an unknown number here equals 48. Well, we can't multiply because we're missing this guy right here, so we're going to work backwards. And we're going to rewrite this problem as 48 divided by 0.39 equals the unknown number. So we're going to be doing a division problem. So I can stop right there because we're only rounding to the nearest whole number. So we know the answer is approximately 123. 39% of 123 equals 48. So the answer for number 13 is 123. Problem number 14. You have an unknown percent of 248. An unknown percent of 248 equals 7. So right away, you know this percent right here is going to be really small because you're taking a percent of 248 and only getting 7. That tells us it's going to be a small percent. We're going to have to work backwards, so we're going to do 7 divided by 248. And we're going to write it over here. We're going to write 7 divided by 248. So basically, we have 0.0282. We definitely don't have to go any farther than that. And we need to change this to a percent. So we need to times it by 100, or just move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. And we get 2.82, but we need to round this to the nearest whole number, which would be approximately 3. So the answer up here is 3% of 248 equals 7. So 3% is the answer, or 3. If I come over here, we're going to write 3 for the answer. Problem 15 is 62% of a number equals 20.5. We're going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left, and we get 0.62 of is times An unknown number equals 20.5. Well, we can't multiply, so we're going to have to work backwards. We're going to have to go that way. We're going to rewrite this problem as 20.5 divided by 0.62 equals an unknown number. 20.5 divided by 0.62. And I could stop there because we're only rounding to the nearest whole number, and 33.0 is approximately 33. So we are done. Up here for the answer, it's going to be 33. Problem number 15 is 33. Problem 16, we have a percent of 571 equals 251. A percent of 571 equals 251. This is a percent times 571 equals 251. Wow, big numbers. We're going to have to work this way. That means we're going to be working in the opposite direction, so we're going to divide. We're going to end up with 251 divided by 571 equals a percent. This is really easy to see. Just look, we're going backwards, see? We know we're going to be going the opposite direction, so we're going to do the opposite operation, so we're going to divide. Well, I'm going to have to write a long division problem of 251 divided by 571. Add a decimal, bring it straight up, and I'm going to add maybe 3 zeros. Hopefully we don't have to do that much division. Really quick, you see how I did this right here and got a 9? Do you realize that I don't have to waste time doing this right here? We already know we're going to have to round this number up, because when we change it to a percent, we're going to move the decimal 2 spaces over, and we'll end up with 43.9. Well, if it's above 5 or 5 or higher, you know you're going to round up. So why do I have to do all this work right here? I did it to show you the work, but honestly, you don't have to do all that work. We end up with 0.439, but it's a percent, so we have to change it to a percent, and we multiply it by 100, or we just move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. It's always 2 spaces, either to the right or to the left. This is to the right because we're changing it to a percent. This is going to equal 43.9%, but the directions say estimate to the nearest whole number, which would be approximately 44. So right here, 44% of 571 equals 251. We're going to write 44 right here, or 44%. Remember, you're just looking for the number, not the percent sign in the answer. Let me clean that up really quick. Number 17, we have a percent of 91 equals 3. A percent of 91 equals 3. We already know this is going to be a small percent because you're taking a percent of 91 and only getting 3, which tells you it should be a small number. Let's change this around. We're going to have a percent times 91 equals 3. Well, we're definitely going to have to work this way because we're missing the number right there. If we work backwards, we're going to say, what is 3 divided by 91 equal as a percent? We're going to do a long division problem again. Kind of does the same thing over and over again, huh? We have 3 divided by 91, so I'm going to do 3 divided by 91. Well, definitely the 3 is going to be too small, so I'm going to have to add a decimal. Bring it straight up. I'm going to add 3 zeros. And we know that 91 cannot go into 3, 0. 91 cannot go into 30, 0. And how many times does 91 go into 300? Well, let's just look at this as 90. How many times does 90 go into 300? 3 times 9 is 27, so my guess it would be 3. So over here, I'm going to do 3 times 91. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 9 is 27. I'm going to get 273. I'm going to subtract. I'm going to need to borrow from the 3. It becomes a 2. The 0 becomes a 10. Change it to a 9 because I'm going to borrow again. 10 minus 3 is 7. And 9 minus 7 is 2. This was correct. So we are going to put a 3 up here. And now we bring down the 0 and we get 270. Well, we just talked about it. 3 times 91 is 273. So the highest it could be is 2. And 2 times 91, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 9 is 18. So you end up with 182. You're going to subtract. You're going to borrow from the 7. It becomes a 6. The 0 becomes a 10. Because the 0 is too small, you need to borrow. 10 minus 2 is 8. 6 minus 8 you cannot do. Borrow again. Becomes 16 minus 8 is 8. Well, you can stop right here because we have 3 numbers past the decimal. We have approximately 0.032. You can put a 0 right here. And we need to change it to a percent because our question is asking what percent of 91 is 3. We're going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the right to change it to a percent, which makes it 3.2%. But the directions say estimate to the nearest whole number, so that's going to be approximately 3%. Do not forget to change this decimal to a percent when you're solving these problems. So you need to move the decimal 2 spaces to the right because you're multiplying by 100 because a percent is out of 100. The answer is 3%. Problem 18. 6% of 183. 6% of 183 equals an unknown number. Woo-wee! We don't have to divide this time. We get to multiply. That is great. We change this percent to a decimal. 1, 2. I know there's only one number here, but you always move it 2 spaces to the left. It's always 2. We put a 0 here. This becomes 0.06 of is times 183. We just do a simple multiplication problem. And then I put the decimal 2 spaces back. I get 10.98, which is approximately 11, very close to 11. The answer is 11. All right, you try to do problem 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. When you're finished, come back to me and we will check your answers. See you in a bit. Welcome back. You were supposed to do 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Problem 19 says 171% of a number equals 12. 171% of a number equals 12. Well, we're definitely not going that way. We have to go this way. We need to change the percent to a decimal. So we need to move it 2 spaces to the left. We end up with 1.71 times an unknown number equals 12. And I'm going to rewrite this, so we're going to go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to say 12 divided by 1.71 equals an unknown number. And we got a division problem again. So we've got 12 divided by 1.71. We're going to need to move the decimal 2 spaces to make the 1.71 into a whole number. And whatever we do to the outside, we have to do to the inside. So 1, 2, and I'm going to add zeros in those empty spaces. So let me rewrite this really quick. We're going to have 1,200 divided by 171. Wow, you really need to know how to divide for this worksheet. Let me erase this to get it out of the way. We are dividing 1,200 by 171. Well, I just changed this 171 to 170 to make a quick estimate. But remember, you're still using this number. It just helps us find the answers. 170, it doesn't go into 1, it won't go into 2, won't go into 120, it'll have to go into 1,200. And we know 10 times 170 is 1,700. About 5 will be approximately 850. So my guess approximately would be 7. So I'm going to take the 7 right here and multiply it by 171. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 7 is 49. Carry the 4. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 4 is 11. Woo-wee! I am good. This is going to be, let me erase this really quick. This is going to be 1,197. And we have a 7 up here. We are going to subtract. And what do we get? We just get 3, right? Let me erase this out of the way so we don't have to have it in the way. In the way, out of the way. So I'm going to add a decimal right here, and I'm going to bring it straight up. And this allows me to add a couple zeros. Remember, this number is not a percent, so really we're rounding to the nearest whole number. If I bring this down, I get 30, so this must be 0 because it's too small. So actually, we're done. We do not have to go any farther because our answer will be approximately 7. Right up here, this is going to be 7. Come back to the worksheet. Problem number 19 is going to be 7. Problem number 20, 4.8% of 168. 4.8% of 168 equals an unknown number. Well, this is great. It's going to be a multiplication problem. I'm so excited. First off, we need to move this decimal 2 spaces to the left to change a percent to a decimal. In the empty space, I put a 0. So I end up with 0.048. Remember, it's 2 spaces no matter what. When you do a percent to a decimal, it's to the left. And when you do a decimal to a percent, it is to the right. The of is multiplication, and we get 168. So we just quickly multiply. But we need to move the decimal 3 spaces back. 1, 2, 3. The answer is approximately 8. So right here it is 8. And when you think about it, this is such a small percent, 4.8% of 168. You know this number is going to be really small. We come back here and we know the answer for number 20 is 8. I love those easy ones like this. This problem 20. Oh, these division ones. Ah. But let's continue. Enough complaining, right? Problem number 21. A percent of 76 equals 10. A percent of 76 equals 10. Rats! Another division problem. Because we're going to have a percent of is times 76 equals 10. And since we're missing the number over here, we're going to have to work this way, which means we're going to have to divide. We're going to have 10 divided by 76 is going to equal some unknown percent. Do you see how I just went ding, ding, and I just divided? We're going to rewrite this, and I'm going to have 10 divided by 76. You know I'm going to have to add a decimal because 10 is too small. Bring it up. And let's add 3 zeros. I'm going to stop here. I don't need to go any farther because I see this right here is going to be 13 because this is less than 5. And what is the rule? If it's less than 5, you don't round up. If it's 5 or greater, you round up. So I can come over here really quick and write 0.13. And since the answer is a percent, let me change the color so you can see that. Since the answer is a percent, that means we're going to need to move the decimal 2 spaces to the right to make it 13 out of 100. So the answer is approximately 13%. Did you see how I was planning ahead already because I knew this was a percent? I only had to go 3 digits past the decimal. You don't have to keep on going. You know you're only going to round or estimate to the nearest whole number, so this is 13%. I come over here to the worksheet and I write 13% or 13, and you find the number 13 in your picture. If you're doing odd, if you're doing even, you don't do that one. All right, problem 22. 57.2% of 91. 57.2% of 91 equals what? Oh, I love this problem. It is a multiplication problem because we can go this way. We are going to multiply, but before we do that, we need to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left to change a percent to a decimal. So this is 0.572 of is times 91. And we just multiply. Sorry, that was kind of fast, but I assume you know how to multiply. So let's put the decimal back. 1, 2, 3. So this is approximately 52 because we're rounding or estimating to the nearest whole number. I'm going to put a 52 right there. And we come back to our worksheet, and the answer for number 22 is 52. Problem 23, 9% of a number equals 1. 9% of a number equals 1. Well, we know we're not multiplying, unfortunately. We're going to first change this percent to a decimal by moving the decimal 2 spaces to the left. We end up with 0.09 of is times a number equals 1. And we're going to work backwards, which means we're going to divide. I am going to rewrite this really quick. It's going to be 1 divided by 0.09 equals a number. And I'm going to do long division over here. I have 1 and I have 0.09. And you already should know I'm going to have to move this decimal to the right 2 spaces to make it into a whole number. And if the decimal is not in sight, it's on the right. So I'm going to have to move this one 2 spaces to the right. That means I put 2 zeros. So really, I get 100 divided by 9. Do you see how I only went 1 space past the decimal? Because this one is not a percent, and we just need to round to the nearest whole number. 9% of 11 equals 1. And this is an approximate, but it's good enough for our worksheet. Come over here, and I put 11. Last problem in this group. We have 31.4% of 89. 31.4% of 89 equals. This is going to be a multiplication problem because we have everything over here. We can go straight through this way. Let me change this to a decimal. Ding, ding. 2 spaces to the left. Always. 0.314 of is times 89. And we do a quick multiplication problem over here. 89 times 0.314. And we need to estimate around this. Well, this is 27.946, which means it's really close to 28. 31.4% of 89 is 28. And really quick, just so you can check this out, 31% is really close to 30%, which is like 1/3. So 3 of these would go into this. And if you change this to 30 plus 30 plus 30, that is approximately 90, which, check it out, really close. So I'm really happy with my answer. I think I am correct. I come over to this worksheet and I put 28. All right, we're almost finished. We have 5 more left. Woo-wee! Why don't you try doing 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 on your own, and when you're finished, come back to me and we will check your answers. See you in a bit. Welcome back. Let's start doing problem 25. 3% of a number equals 2. 3% of a number equals 2. First off, we need to change this percent to a decimal by moving the decimal 2 spaces to the left. Put a 0 there. So we end up with 0.03 of is times a number equals 2. Well, we're definitely going to have to go this way, so we're going to have to divide. 2 divided by 0.03 equals a number. And we're going to do a long division problem over here. 2 divided by 0.03. Well, you should be seeing a pattern by now. I'll add a decimal, bring it straight up, put it there, add a 0, we get 20 again. So this will be 6. So basically, it's a repeater. It's going to go 6 forever and ever and ever. And we only need to estimate to the nearest whole number. And since 6 is greater than 5, we're going to change 66.6 to 67. So 3% of 67 right there equals 2. I come over here and I put 67 for the answer. Problem number 26. What percent of 71 is 3? What percent of 71 is 3? We're going to have a percent times 71 equals 3. And we're going to have to go backwards. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3 divided by 71 equals a percent. Put a little question mark there. Let's write it right here. 3 divided by 71. Let me add one. No, I don't have to add any more zeros. I was going to add a 0, but I'm totally wrong because we have 3 digits to the right of the decimal, and we only need to move it over 2. So we get 0.042. And we need to change it to a percent, so I need to move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. And I get 4.2, which is approximately 4%. So this is 4. 4% of 71 is 3. I come over here and I write 4 for my answer, or 4%. Number 27, 81% of a number equals 4. I have 81% of a number equals 4. I'm going to rewrite this by moving the decimal 2 spaces over to change a percent to a decimal. 0.81 times a number equals 4. We're definitely going backwards. We're going to divide 4 by 0.81 equals a number. I'm going to do a long division problem over here. and I bring down the other 0. But you know what? I can actually stop here because this isn't a percent. I'm just wasting time. This is a good enough answer to estimate what the answer is. This is 4.9, which is approximately 5. This is going to be 5, and this is going to be 5. So 81% of 5 equals 4. I come over here, and I put 5 for my answer. Number 28, 15% of a number equals 9. 15% of a number equals 9. Again, we're not going to be multiplying. Darn it. Rats. We change this to a decimal by moving the decimal 2 spaces to the left. And we get 0.15 of is times a number equals 9. We know we're going to have to go backwards, so we know we're going to have to divide. Let me rewrite this. 9 divided by 0.15. I hope you've all figured this out. All I do is take this number and divide it by whatever's over here. We need to write this as a long division problem. So 9 divided by 0.15. I need to move the decimal out of the way, but whatever I do to the outside, I have to do to the inside. If the decimal is not in sight, it is on the right. It's right there, so I move it 2 and add 2 zeros. This becomes 900 divided by 15. 9 is too small, but 15 goes into 90, what, 6 times? 6 times 15 is 90. So we subtract, we get 0, bring down the other 0, and it cannot go into 0, so it's 0. The answer is 60. 15% of 60 equals 9. Over here, we are going to write 60. 2 more left. Woohoo! 29. What percent of 11 equals 8? What percent of 11 equals 8? Again, we're going to be doing a division problem because we are missing the percent. So it's a percent times 11 equals 8. Again, all we do is take this number right here and divide it by this number. I'll just rewrite it for you really quick. 8 divided by 11 is going to give us a percent. When we solve this, we're going to need 3 numbers to the right of the decimal because when we're done, we're going to have to move the decimal 2 spaces over and we will have to estimate. All right, a long division problem. Be a repeater, 727272. I get 77, I subtract, I get 3. We have 0.727, but we're changing this into a percent. We need to move the decimal 2 spaces, always 2, either left or right, to the right because we're changing a decimal to a percent. We end up with 72.7%, which is approximately 73%. Up here, this is 73%. Can erase these really quick. And we are on the last problem. 3.4% of a number equals 2. 3.4% of a number equals 2. We are going to change the percent to a decimal. 1, 2. 2 spaces to the left. Always, always 2. Put a 0 in the empty space. I get 0.034 of is times a number equals 2. We're going to be working backwards, so we're just going to take this 2 and divide it by this number to get that number. Pretty simple. Like I said, after 30 problems, I hope everyone figured that one out. We're going to do 2 divided by 0.034 equals what? So let me write this as a long division problem again. we get 58.8. Let me erase all this mess really quick, just to give us some space. We have 58.8, which is approximately 59. So our answer up here is 59. 3.4% of 59 equals 2. And guess what? We are finished. I write 59 right there. And we're done. I know this was a long video and a long worksheet, but I hope I helped you. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.